Hello guys, so welcome to part 3 of my design patterns video tutorial series. So as I mentioned in the last video, we will be getting into our first design pattern in this video. But before I do that, let me quickly show you something I changed from where we left off last time. So I just added a field for the event type. I realized we also need to store the event type in the event class so we know what is the event that occurred. We could do this by trying to do like event.get class so we can find the actual class name of the event, but this will not be so flexible because we are bound to always using the class name. So introducing a new field will give us that added flexibility for the event type. So I added this line here, and I added a parameter in the constructor, of course assigning it, and I added a getter. And then in each of the event classes, I passed in the event type to the superclass. So this matches the format in our logs. If we use the class name, as you notice, it will not match. So that's why adding a field for the event type gives us that added flexibility. Okay, so now the first problem that we need to solve is how to connect the how to convert the string of the log to an event object. So as you can see that the logs look like this, and we need to take this is the string that is being emitted by the backend simulator. So since we should not change the backend simulator because we don't want to break working code, and so the backend simulator is going to give us just a string. And now our first task is to find a way to convert the string to an event object. So this is exactly what the factory method pattern does. So the factory method pattern, you can think of it as taking raw ingredients and converting it to a product or something that we're interested in. So just as how an actual factory does. So in this case, our raw ingredients are these strings, and this string will be converted to a product, an actual product which the factory will produce, which we call an event. So let's quickly take a look at the UML diagram of the factory design pattern. So as you can see here, there is an interface for the product. So this is like the event interface, and we have like several concrete events. So we have our new user registered event, user deactivated event, etc. And then we have an interface for a factory that would create the event. So this just has a method called create event, and it will produce an event. And we can have several concrete factories. So for now, our factory takes in a string from the logs and converts it to an event. Later on, we might want to take in a JSON and convert it to an event. So by programming it to interface, we have the flexibility of being able to create different kinds of factories that take different kinds of raw materials and convert them to a event object or to a product. So let's jump right into implementing this. We have already implemented these, our events and our concrete events. Now we're going to first implement the factory. So first, I'm going to create a new package for our event factory. And then I will start by creating the interface. So this will be an event factory. Let me just So this interface will just have one method, which would be create event. Now the input of this will vary depending on what kind of factory we have. For now we have our input as string, but we want to make it flexible. So a little trick that I like to do is using generics. So I can have it take in an input type, and the create event will be having that input type. So by doing this, we have the flexibility of creating a factory that can take in different kinds of inputs. So next I would create a implementation. So let's call this backend logs event factory, or yeah, this is fine. Backend logs event factory. So we're going to implement an event factory string, because our backend logs are coming in as strings. So when we override the method, we have our create event from the string. Now in here we're going to take this string in the logs and create an event and return it. So if there's no event that can be created, or we detect that the input is invalid, we can simply return null. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and then write in the logic for converting the input to an event, and then when we pick up, I'll just run through the logic. Okay, I've coded up the factory. So first I defined two constants. One is for the separator of the event type. As you can see, the event type is on the left side of the column, and then the remaining attributes are on the right side. And then I defined a constant for the delimiter for the attributes. So the attributes here, as you can see, are delimited by comma and space. And in order to extract them, we will use this delimiter. Now let's jump into our create event. First, we get the event type by getting the left side of the input based on this separator. So the separator is the colon. We get the left side of it, and then we get the event attributes as a string, which would be the right side of the separator. And then in case we encounter something like this, it's simply gonna throw an exception over here. So this index of is gonna throw an exception if, this substring is gonna throw an exception if this index is not found, because this will be -1. So if we catch an exception, we simply want to return null, because we know that it's not a valid event. So moving on, after extracting the right side, we get the we extract each individual attribute and store it in a list by calling this get tokens as list method. We pass in the string and the delimiter. So this one just tokenizes the string using this delimiter, and then iterates over the tokens, stores it in a list, and returns the list to us. So now that we have our list and our event type, and we pass in the current time as the occurrence time of the event to this make event object method. And what this method does is it simply checks the event type, and then I added an event type tag in each of the event classes so that we don't have to hard code the event type here like this. So let me show you what I changed. So I added I added this final string event tag. So this is also used to pass it to the super type, so we don't have any duplication. And then I did similar thing for each of the other classes: deactivated, added to cart, etc. So we can use that tag to check our event type, and if the tag is not found, again we return null. So this indicates that this will return null, and that means it's an invalid event. And then after extracting that base tag, so if it's these two events, we extract the first attribute from the list. That would be country. Here, country. And then if it's add to cart or out of stock, we have product ID, quantity, and then we extract them respectively from index 0 and 1. And for purchased and returned, we go product ID, quantity, and country. That would be 0, 1, 2. And then we create the event, new event, and return it. So this is how the factory looks like. In the next video, we will see how to pass in this string from these strings from the logs and get an event object out of it.